Hour number two, well underway right now. He is Mike Cagley. He's Brad Sturdy. I'm Larry Smith. Glad you're still with us here on the show. I want to take a look here around the Big Ten. Fellas, we're now 1 month in the books of this new 2024 season with 18 teams in the Big Ten. I mean, coast to coast travel. We saw Rutgers going all the way halfway across the globe to play Washington last week. Give me your kind of what's your big surprise, your takeaways, biggest surprise, biggest disappointment here in the first month?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, what is there like 7 ranked teams in the Big Ten? That's a pretty
Yeah.
good list. It's got some depth, but I think Indiana's the surprise team on the good side. I mean, I think they've had a great start. They're 5-0. Now they're 4-0 at home, and their only win is at a really, really bad UCLA team. So, and they did beat them, but so we'll see how that goes. And if I'm looking for, that's kind of what I think Indiana's been the surprise team. But I also think Nebraska's shown signs of getting to a different level, and Rutgers has been kind of shown signs to get to that next level.
For me, I think Indiana was a kind of surprise because they had a good transfer portal season. They've got clearly a very good new coach that they've hired, and they got a gift from the Big Ten in terms of schedule. But to play as well as they haven't won the Big Ten since 1967. So that is impressive. And I think Signetti may be so good that he's too good for Indiana's own good. And
I wasn't born yet, Mike.
Yeah, unfortunately I was 6 months old when they did that, and and I will tell you, I think he could be gone to the SEC next year with jobs opening like Florida, and who knows what's going to even Oklahoma fans are getting nervous, which seems a bit abrupt to me. And for my biggest disappointment, I thought Maryland was supposed to be a team that was pretty good this year and was going to push upwards a little bit. And I know it's early, but 0-2 is not how you want to start your Big Ten schedule off. They're going to have to turn things around and do things a lot better than they have.
I'm going to stick in the Hoosier State, and just as Indiana's been just a fantastic surprise, again, helped by the schedule gods, as you mentioned, Purdue has been just a team that I just did not see this kind of fall off in year two for Ryan Walters. A lot of issues in West Lafayette, a lot of problems right now. Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator, is let go this week, and a shakeup again very early. I mean, what are we, 15 games into the Ryan Walters era? There's not a good way to start. And Walters discovering it's sometimes a little hard to be the guy in charge, right? So maybe they can turn things around. We'll see. But with that too, I think that's where the scheduling, to me, when I think there's a lot of doom and gloom with teams, and oh my goodness, we're adding UCLA and Oregon and USC and that kind of thing. But you're only playing nine of the you only play nine of the other 17 teams every season. So you're only playing half the teams. And so sometimes the dice is going to roll in your favor, and you get a good schedule, and you have a shot at that 10-win season. A couple of teams that haven't had that happen in Indiana, Illinois at 4-1 are a couple of teams that now you look up and all of a sudden 10 wins is not out of the question for these teams.
Yeah, it definitely opens the door for these teams to maybe sneak into that college football playoff. Or win a conference get to a conference championship game just because you have a great schedule and you beat up on the bottom feeders, and that's really what you have to do to get there. I do think the other side about this is you want to be competitive every year in and year out. I think you just got to find a way to be make sure you're a 6-win bowl team every year, and then you're going to have the right schedule some years where you have a chance to be better. But let's say one year you've got Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, you're probably not winning, right? I mean, one of those are teams, so it's just the reality.
The schedule gods are really, really important. And whether you believe it or not, I think you have to have a quarterback that can throw the ball and move. And you have to have some way to keep him upright. I'm not saying that he's going to be untouched back there. But to me, if you get a good schedule, you've got a quarterback and you can keep him protected, you've got an opportunity to make some hay. And when you get into a single game elimination, we all know that weird things happen.
Well, one of those teams that we think we've thought from the very beginning has a good shot at being one of the 12 teams still playing in the playoff end of the season is Penn State. Really dominant defensive game against Illinois last week. They gave up the touchdown of the opening drive of the game. never let the Illini score again, 21-7 in that one, and their defense was outstanding. They take on a UCLA team that, as you mentioned, has a lot of issues right now. The Bruins playing, they get a chance to get the Happy Valley treatment and 100,000 plus fans there at Beaver Stadium.
Boy, I would not want to be UCLA.
No.
It's just they're struggling, but they're a 28-point underdog at Penn State. And it's not like it's going to be a shootout. I think UCLA is really on the struggle bus, and they got a long way to go. And this is where Penn State's you can really put a hurting on them.
Penn State has to figure out a way to help Drew Aller out because they don't have, again, wide receivers who can get separation. And his footwork is such that if you put a pass rush on him and he has to move a step or two, it's hard for him to get rid of the ball quick enough. And I think they are an unbelievable defense. I just wonder if they can compete with that top tier of 3 or 4 teams because of that limitation.
Yeah, but they do run the ball very, very well.
But I think the top 3 or 4 teams will take that away.
Yeah, I got you. I'm with you on that. Singleton and Allen are fantastic. So again, Penn State, the big favorites on Saturday. Another team we haven't talked about yet tonight is Wisconsin. You lose at home to Alabama. You go out. You were controlling the game at USC, and you lay an egg in the second half. And right now, some questions in Madison about Luke Fickell right now, with the Badger team struggling as they welcome in Purdue.
You know, it's interesting. Mike's talked about this a lot on the show, talking about how Luke Fickell had to totally change his program because he's got a different style than what they had before. So he's got to get different offensive linemen, different way to play. And so it's going to take some time, I think, maybe more time than if you brought in a person who played a similar style. So that's where I think that it's going to take them some time. They got to be patient with him and allow him to get his guys in there over the next couple of years.
Brad, I agree with you that you want patience. You want a coach to get 4 years. But 2 things are playing against Luke Fickell. One is Kurt Signetti could go to the CFP in his first year. And then the second thing is guys, we're old enough to remember in the 70s and 80s, everybody except Northwestern had an automatic W for Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I can understand why their fans are like, wait a minute, we're going away from what helped us to be a solid second tier behind only 2 teams in the Big Ten for 30 years. And Fickell's got to find a way to turn this bus pretty quick.
You know, Wisconsin's fan base, Iowa's fan base are both probably the 2, to your point, Mike, that thought in this new world, this new era of the Big Ten, right? They could be the ones that to slot right in behind that. Like you said, be that those 5th, 6th programs right now. If you kind of took the hierarchy, the class system of the Big Ten, both struggling right now. Iowa's one of those as well that, you know, because they played such great defense and the West Division was always the weaker of the 2, Iowa always had the chance to kind of, win and get to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. All of a sudden, they make the change on offense. They get rid of Brian Ferentz as offensive coordinator, and yet they are still have had their struggles here in the early season. And now they run up against an Ohio State team that if there's one team that probably has not been affected by all the change in college football, it's Ohio State. They look as good as ever, even though they've had a lot of changes, especially at quarterback. They just keep rolling right along.
Yeah, Ohio State's really good. But one thing I'll say about Iowa, Larry, you mentioned that after this Ohio State game, they may have the best schedule in the Big Ten left. They don't play any more ranked teams. Their toughest road games are at Maryland and at Michigan State. And the 3 road games are at Maryland, Michigan State, and UCLA. That is not a murderer's row right now of road games. And then you've got Nebraska, Wisconsin, Northwestern, and Washington at home after this Ohio State game. It's conceivable. I think they may be favored in every game the rest of the season, which would lead to a 10-2 season, even though we don't think they're very good. It's crazy how the schedule can change the way perceptions are.
Yeah, I think the 3 teams that should be going to church, make sure you get up early no matter how much fun you had on Saturday, are Indiana, Rutgers, and Iowa. And they need to be very thankful. And Ohio State right now, they have the talent that puts them on a par with Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. The question mark we all have is when a team tries to out-physical the Buckeyes, how are they going to respond? And we don't know because Michigan has put a thumping on them 3 years in a row, and Georgia was able to out hit them. One of them I thought was a late hit in the CFP that allowed Georgia to get through. So Ohio State, with all the talent they have, they're going to have to muscle their way through at times this year.
Another game we're watching, two teams on the come up in the Big Ten, Rutgers and Nebraska. We talked preseason about, there's some that had Rutgers as a dark horse, right? To be like a third or fourth team out of the Big Ten to reach the CFP. They've played outstanding here to start. And Nebraska had the overtime loss at home against Illinois, bounced back very well last week, and they're back at home again, a team again that looks to be shooting for 8 or 9 wins here this season.
Yeah, this is kind of Rutgers' first major test on the road, right? I mean, they're going into a hostile stadium, 401st straight sellout for the Cornhuskers. This is going to be a tough one, and it'll be interesting to see what Rutgers can do against Nebraska, and also how Raiola handles that Rutgers defense, because Shiano's going to have he's going to throw some different tricks in there, and they're going to blitz from different angles and come at him with things he hasn't seen. How does he handle that? I mean, he's looked really good so far, but it's going to be a different animal.
I look at this game between Rutgers and Nebraska as the game that will tell us what each of these teams is. I think this is a big one, and I think it's a one that will really kind of define. I think when you look back at this season, I think Nebraska or Rutgers will look back to this game and say, "Oh, we won that. That was important," or "We lost that, and that kind of put us in a tailspin."
Another team that looking to they bounced back very well last week is USC. Again, could have had the win at Michigan the week before. Let that one slip away. They come back big second half against Wisconsin. It's just so cool to see Wisconsin in the Coliseum. Sorry, just a Big Ten game. It's just I couldn't. I thought the optics were fantastic. Loved it, and just was like, wow, the Big Ten. USC really is in the Big Ten. It's one thing to see them at Michigan. It was something else to see them at home playing a Big Ten team. It just in September, it just was really different. USC taking on Minnesota this week.
Yeah, this is another game where you kind of look at Minnesota. They probably should have beaten Michigan, or very well could have beaten Michigan with a different call there. Who knows? Yeah. But I just think USC has more talent, and you wonder. I think they're going to win this one even at Minnesota. But here's the way I look at this: this is a really important game for PJ Fleck, because the bloom is kind of off the rose right now for him, right? I mean, comes in with all this hype, and we're going to be good, and he's had some good things. But, they haven't gotten to that next level. And if, I guess 6 wins is good, but they've been firing guys at Minnesota when they don't get enough wins and they only get to just bowl games. And that's kind of what PJ's done.
Which is pretty much the ceiling of that program. So I would really tell the Minnesota fans to calm down a little bit. I think USC wins this game, but boy, they are an inconsistent team. You just don't know what you're going to get. And I'm not talking from week to week. I'm talking from quarter to quarter.
No, that's fair. It's very fair. And Brad, great point about PJ Fleck. I'm glad you brought that up, because to your point, with some of these programs, if you're getting to 7 wins each year, that's nice. And you're going to a bowl game and not losing. But I think Minnesota, they have higher expectations than that with some of the recent success with other coaches they've had over the past couple of decades. And so to your point, at what stage do the fans begin to get restless, and maybe the administration say we want something more out of this than what PJ Fleck has given them?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, but I don't know if they can expect to be Michigan, Ohio State, whatever. I mean, I think their goal is to compete with Iowa and Wisconsin and Illinois and those types of teams. I mean, I think that's where Minnesota should be.
Yeah, and I think you got to be very careful, because they look back to 2 or 3 coaches in our lifetime, and there's plenty of other coaches that were in there. And if you're going to go away from PJ Fleck, I'm not saying he's Nick Saban, but if you're going to go away from him, you darn well better improve. And I'm not certain that that's that easy to do.
In these days, it's an expensive proposition to cut a coach with that kind of salary and then bring in another coach who's going to want that kind of money as well, with no guarantee of results. You're exactly right. All right, let's look around the Big Ten. We've got to take a quick break right here and pay some bills. We're back with more after this.